I'm Tanya with Imagination Arts, and today I'm going to be doing this fairy with the moon background.
A secret world. Secret world.
Hi, I'm Tanya and welcome to Imagination Arts. Today I'm going to be doing this colored pencil fairy with a moon background and stars done with brush and pencil touch up and brush and pencil titanium white. So let's go. I have my colored pencil set from Walmart. I also have my masking tape, a piece of tracing paper, and a piece of transfer paper. I also have a sharpener, an eraser, and I'm also using a brush and pencil color touch-up and brush and pencil titanium white. To blend, I am using a small bowl with a tight lid for my Odourless paint thinner with a small brush for blending and thick napkins and a rag to wipe my brush on. Now I'm moving on to the background. For time, I have already done most of the background. I'm using a gray pencil and making sure that it's nice and sharp. You want to make sure that your pencils are nice and sharp to be sure to get pigment down into all the crevices of the paper. Otherwise, you will have the white of the paper showing through and it will not blend very well. So you always want to make sure that you have a nice sharp point. Okay, and I'm just continuing to fill in the background with my gray pencil. And those lines that you see on my paper, I was using a poster board mount for my backing, and the lines in the poster board were showing through even though it has a plastic backing over it. So I'll know not to use that side in the future. But just continuing to put down a gray background, continuing to just fill in the paper, going over it, making sure that I'm getting all of the white covered. Just trying to cover up the white of the paper. And continuing to lay down colors. Going back over areas where I can see the paper still, making sure that it's good and covered. And I'll do 2 or 3 layers of the gray before I finally go and blend it. So I'll fill it all in, and then I'll go back in over it several times until I think that I have the color saturation that I want. Again, just continuing to fill in that background with my gray pencil. Sharpening my pencil again and keep the point on it nice and sharp. Again, showing you that you want to make sure you have a nice fine point on that pencil so that you make sure that you get it down into all the good crevices. Again, just continuing to fill in that background. Again, going back over areas where I saw that I needed more pigment. Again, right now I'm going in little circles or ovals, so not to have lots of harsh stop and start points. Just trying to get all the paper covered. The noises you're hearing in the background is my grandson playing with his toys. He was here while I was doing this voiceover. Again, just continuing to put down this gray color on the background. I wanted to do a light gray background to start off and then get darker around the edges because I wanted to have kind of a glow effect around the moon when I put the moon in. Again, going back over the top, putting down some more pigment, making sure I've got good saturation of pigment on the paper, filling in, going in over areas where it looks like it needed more, or where there were gaps, where there was no pigment on the paper, or where I missed areas. Checking my pencil to make sure that it still had a good point on it. Okay, now I'm getting my thinner, and I'm using that small plastic bowl with the tight screw-on lid to keep my paint thinner from spilling or from evaporating. My small brush that I use for blending. Now I'm just going to start blending that out with the paint thinner. And you want to use odorless paint thinner that you can find in the art section at Walmart. Don't try using just regular paint thinner in the hardware or paint section, because that's not for art. It's not archival, and it will mess up the paper. You want to make sure that you use either the Mona Lisa odorless mineral spirits or paint thinner, or Gamma Salt that you can buy. You can get those off of Amazon, as well as Stick Blix and other art supplies websites or stores. They're made for these things. They're made for using with art. So again, just continuing to blend this out. And as you can see, even with the amount of pigment that I put down on the paper, because of using that poster board backing for my backing on my easel, from me pushing onto the paper with my pencil, even though I was doing it real lightly, it was still bringing out the texture of the poster board, because I wasn't using the side that had the hard plastic cover on it. So it's going to, because of that, it's going to have dark streaks through the picture as well as it's going to look like there's areas with not much pigment on it because of that. Again, just continuing to go back and get more, and then dabbing it off on my rag or my paper towel to get the excess off, and going back and blending it some more. And now, as you see with the way that I'm blending this, there's areas where that are coming out darker as I blend it, and that's just basically where places where I put extra layers or extra pigment because I wanted those areas to be a little bit darker to give the image more contrast and more depth and volume. Also, to give it a little bit more realistic sky look view once we get the moon and everything in there. And again, just continuing to blend that out with the brush. Okay, now I've got my gray colored pencil again, and I'm just going to go back over it, put some more pigment down in areas where it looks like it needed more color, darken it up a little bit more. Now that I've blended it out and let it dry, just going back in and putting some more pigment, some more layers down over that. Again, going in large ovals, because now that I've got the layers down, the main coat down, I can get a little bit bolder with those pencil strokes and those ovals getting a little bit larger up, because I'm just basically right now just going back in and putting in some more pigment and color in on the page once I let it dry. Darkening it up, getting some more pigment in the areas where I wanted it.
Keep on.
Again, just continuing to lay down layers over this, covering areas where it looked like it needed more pigment on the paper to darken it up and brighten it up a little bit. And now that I've gotten some more pigment down on the paper and darkened it up and put some more layers down, now I'm going to go back over it again and blend it out again. Just continuing to blend that out with my brush and my Odourless paint thinner. Okay, now I've got my black color pencil and I'm going around the edges, laying down a layer to put some shadow and darken up the sky around the moon. I'm just going to go around the whole picture here, the whole page, around the edges, and lay down some color to darken this up. Again, using that small black pencil with a fine sharp on it, make sure it was nice and sharp, and going in small ovals or circles. Again, just continuing to use small circles and ovals and doing it at a section at a time, and you'll see me move from one area of the picture to another area, because sometimes it gets a little tedious just continuing to go in one straight motion across the page, and so you'll see me move back and forth from one area to another. That's just to keep it from getting so tedious and seeming like it's taking forever. And again, just do it a section at a time. That way you don't get quite so bored with it. Because if you can do it in just a section at a time, it doesn't seem quite so tedious, because you only have a small area that you're working on, and then you can move on to another area. Again, just continuing to go over those areas, trying to get down as much color on the page as I can. And I'm using Canson mixed media paper here. It's got some texture to it, not quite as much as watercolor or the other hot press papers. But it does have some texture and some teeth to it. And again, all my materials that I use in my videos is all materials that I purchased from Walmart, because since I'm a starting off artist, getting back into the world of art again after many years of not doing it, didn't have quite the budget that a lot of people do, so I had to start off somewhere. And so I'm using a lot of materials from Walmart. My pencils that I'm using are the small 12 pencil set from Dollar, as well as my 80-piece set from of artist quality from Walmart as well. The Odourless paint thinner that I'm using is the small Dollar Rooney low odor paint thinner that you find in the art section. Now the brush and pencil touch up and brush and pencil titanium white that I will be using later on in the video for the stars and some highlights is I purchased from brushandpencils.com. Again, going back over areas where it looked like it needed more pigment on the paper, and to saturate it good, make sure it has lots of color and pigment on the paper, so that the Odourless paint thinner or mineral spirits, whichever you're using, will have enough pigment on the paper to blend. Go see Daddy. And now I've got my brush and my paint thinner, and now I'm just going to start blending this out. And you can see that as I'm blending this out, a lot of those pencil strokes will just disappear. You will have some pencil strokes, but once you've blended it, a lot of those pencil strokes will blend out. And basically what you'll have is more or less, instead of pencil strokes, you'll have a few brush strokes. Again, just blending that out, getting those edges nice and smooth. Getting some more paint thinner and then going up to the top and starting to blend the edges on the side. Again, just continuing to blend that out. Trying to make sure that all the areas get nice and blended smoothly. And anytime you're blending, whenever you're going to go into another area, you want to make sure that you clean that brush off good on the paper towel with the Odourless paint thinner before you move into an area with a different color, or else you'll still have some of the pigment from previously on there and it will blend in with the other color and it can make it look bad. And again, you can see some areas around the edges where it's a lot lighter than others, and it could be, some people would say that that's due to the fact that I didn't have enough pigment on there, which is true, and that's because those areas I wanted to be a little bit lighter to kind of give it the effect of like some clouds and some movement in the sky. Again, now I'm going back over with the black pencil and darkening up the areas, putting some more pigment down in the areas where I wanted it to be darker. Once I let that all dry. And see, as you're blending, you'll see areas, you'll find areas where you didn't have enough pigment, and that's fine. You can just continue to layer it until you get it the saturation and the color that you want. Again, blending those edges out some now around where the moon is going to go in and the fairy. We want those to have a nice smooth fuzzy look. I'm going to take them with my black pencil and going in around the edges of the area where the moon and the fairy are going to go in, to make sure to blend that black into the gray a little bit to make it blend in together. Kind of putting some more pigment down over that area where the moon is going to go in. And going in small circles or large ovals. Now I'm going to blend that out. On your pencils. When they get down, you can always sharpen them again, or you can use sandpaper to make the point finer without having to sharpen it, and that will make your pencils last longer. Okay, so now I've got my tracing paper with my fairy on it taped up to the board, with my piece of white tracing paper underneath, with the white transfer paper, underneath my tracing paper, and I'm using my tracing pen to go around the edges of the fairy. Now here you'll see that I'm using the white tracing paper with the fairy because I thought that once I had my dark background down, that the white tracing paper would show up good on there, but for some reason it did not show up like I expected it to. So later on I changed my mind on the direction I wanted the fairy to go in. Instead of facing that direction, I wanted her to face the other way. So later on you'll see that the fairy isn't facing the same direction that I'm tracing her in right now, because I later went back over it, since the white did not show up, and retraced her using the dark transfer page, so that I could see her outlines a little bit better. And I also flipped her over because I had decided that I wanted her facing the other direction in the picture. But right here you can see this, I went ahead and left this in here so that you could see that as you're working on things, if you make a mistake or change your mind on something, it's really easy to just fix that. Also, I left this in so that you could see how I transferred my image onto the page. And what I did is first I selected what I wanted my piece to be, and then I picked different reference photos to use, and I used those. And what I did was I just used my tracing paper to trace the image onto the tracing paper, and then once I had the image on the tracing paper, again used the transfer paper to transfer the image to the paper. And as you can see there, I lifted it up to see how well it came out, and as you can see, it did not show up very well. So later on, I did switch the image over and used a different darker tracing paper for tracing it on there. Okay, so now here you can see that the fairy, where I flipped the fairy over and I used the black transfer sheet instead of the white for putting the fairy down on the page so that I could see her better. And that it's flipped over and facing the other direction, and you can actually see the outlines of where the fairy is now. And so now I'm basically just taking my black colored pencil and I'm going in and I'm outlining her where her hair is and going in and filling in her hair. Again, just going along and putting down hair, continuing to check my reference photo to see where her hair is actually going, where her hair is laying. Now I'm just kind of bringing out some of those facial features. Defining her neck and her body. Again, bringing that hair down. Sorry about my head getting in the way there. I guess I need to adjust my camera again. And getting that hair down in there, bringing it in over her shoulders. Now where you see that I've left the white of the paper or the gray highlighted background back, that's highlights in her hair, and you'll see later on she had a little bit of a purplish tint in the highlights, and so I'll go in now with a purple here and cover that highlighted area, bring some of that purple down into her hair. Not quite sure what I was doing here. Okay, switching to another pencil. Okay, and now I'm switching over to do the wings. And I've picked up a kind of a blue, I'm not quite sure which blue this is. I think it's kind of like a violet blue or a midnight blue. Not a real deep dark blue, but one that had a little bit of purple in it. Again, outlining those wings and then filling those in. Outlining the bottom wing. Filling that in. Now I'm going in and just filling in the wing. Doing small circles. And then once I have those laid in, I'll and filling in those wings with that blue. Switching to another pencil, getting some more color. Looking at my reference photo to see what color I need in these wings. Okay, now I've picked up that light violet color because the wings had a really light violet color in them. Going over the areas where I saw in the reference photo where it had this purplish tint in the wings. Checking my camera to make sure that I'm not in the picture or blocking the view. And continue to just fill in those wings with that light purple. And then after again, sorry about the background noise there. My little grandson is here this week and he's playing with toys. He's trying to be a good boy and be quiet for Grammy, but sometimes he just can't be quiet. Now I've got my brush and my Odourless Mint Spirits and I'm just going over those wings and blending that. Now I've got my black pencil and I'm just going to go in there and bring in some of these veins in the wings. And kind of give the edges a little bit more crispness and definition. Go in and put in these veins on this other wing. And again here you can see where that, using the back of that poster board mount was really becoming an issue for me, because as I was trying to lay in those veins, the texture from the cardboard was making it difficult to put those veins in there. Putting the veins in the bottom half of the wing. And then kind of going in and putting some shading in there on the top of that, of the wings, where there was some shading in some darker areas. Okay, now I've switched over to my tan or my skin tone pencil and filling in the body parts, filling in the legs and the arms and the face. You can see I've filled those in. And you can't tell it very well in this video, but there in front of her, underneath her hair, her other arm was kind of wrapped around her body. Now I'm kind of going in, and she had her legs had brought in some of that purplish tint from her wings and her outfit that she had on, and so I'm just kind of bringing that purple down into her legs. Again, trying to follow my reference photo as close as I can. They don't have to be exact, you just want to get them close. Okay, now I've switched over to my darker purple, and I'm beginning to fill in the dress that she was wearing, or her outfit that she had on, filling in her clothing, putting in the purplish shadows around her neck from her outfit. Now I'm just kind of putting in the darker striped areas where her ruffles are on her skirt.
Mommy.
Now I'm going in and filling in the lighter areas of the skirt, putting some definition in areas to make it look like they're kind of ruffled over. Filling in the body area of the outfit. Okay, now I've got my moon and my fairy all filled out, and so I'm going to take my eraser and just kind of go in here with my eraser around the moon and just kind of use the eraser around the edges of it to kind of bring out some of that color and show the white of the paper again and trying to give that moon that glowy effect around the edges with the eraser. And just you continually need to use that eraser around the edges of the moon, erasing all the areas where I want it to have a glow. Now kind of just using my brush to blend that, wipe off some of that eraser. Again, now I'm taking the eraser and going in on the moon and erasing the areas where I wanted the shine of the moon surface to show through a little more. Again, just looking at my pictures, see where I need to bring out some highlights. Using that eraser to put those highlights in there just by removing some of the pigment. And as you can see, I've going around and looking out at all the areas where I think I might need to remove some little more, just looking at the picture. Wiping off the eraser scrap. And now you can see the whole thing where if I've put the glow in using the eraser and brought out the areas of the moon where the surface was brighter. Now I'm using the eraser to just kind of go in and put some little stars. In the reference photo, it looked like she was either trying to hold a star or grab a star, and so at the end of her hand she had this little bright spot. So now I'm just going in and putting all the little stars in with my eraser, and then once I have those little stars put in with my eraser, then I will go back in with my brush and pencil touch-up and brush and pencil titanium white mixture and just kind of touch those stars up and put some highlights on them and brighten them up. And you want to put some clusters. You don't want to just have random spots all over. You want them to actually look like stars. And now here I've taken my little mixing cup, which you can buy these at Walmart in the pack over where the plastic plates and cups are. And I'm taking my titanium white and putting a little of it into the mixing bowl or container that I'm using to mix it in. And then I will take my brush and pencil touch up, and you want to look at it, and if there's any of that white on the bottle, you want to mix it up really well. Make sure that all that white is mixed in there, or else your mixture won't be come out right. And so you want to just then put a couple of drops of that touch up in with the powder. And then you want to just take your brush that you're going to use. I'm using just a small liner brush for these stars and these highlights. And then I'm just going in and using the touch up and the titanium white with my liner brush to put the stars in there and kind of put highlights on them. And there I went and got my highlighter brush. Now I'm going to, I'm using my brush to mix the colors. Now with this touch-up, titanium touch-up and this titanium white, the more of the touch-up that you put, the more translucent your mixture will be. So if you want it to be more opaque, you want to put more powder to touch up, or more titanium white than touch up. You only want like a drop or two of the touch up to the titanium white to get it to be more opaque. As you can see, now I'm using my titanium white and my touch up to go in and just touch up those stars and brighten them up. Then going in and putting some like random little spots where I saw on my reference photo where they had some little stars shining through the wings of the fairy. Putting some little highlights in and some little stars. And like I said, you want to put them in clusters. You don't want to just have dots here and there, because then that doesn't look very natural. Again, going in and touching up those areas where there was shining through the fairy. Touching up those stars. Putting some highlights in. Adding a few more stars there. Now I'm going to take my touch up and just kind of go in and put some highlights on the moon around the edges to make it look like it's got a little bit more of a glow around the edges. Again, continuing to put some touch up around the edges here. And now I'm going to go into the areas of the moon where the surface should be shining and touch those up with the touch up and the titanium white. Again, continuing to touch up that moon there, bringing out the areas of it where it needed to shine through more. Now I'm going in and putting in like a glow around the star that she was holding, because I noticed in the reference photo that the one that she was holding had some, and I hope you enjoyed this video glow today. around it with a little bit of ray of light.
Click
the
like button down below. And if you haven't yet, go ahead and click the subscribe button.
Okay, and now you can see the completed picture. This is the whole completed picture. And I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please click the like button down.